Hey, we are ready to rock and roll. Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Troy Williams. I am one of the principals here at CS4 Success, and I'm really grateful for everyone tuning in this evening. This evening, we have some very interesting guests. We have our counseling community here representing to talk about computer science education and counseling and how it connects and how to connect students with those opportunities. So first and foremost, we have Dr. Maureen Stewart. Welcome, Dr. Stewart. If you want to take a couple of minutes and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you, Troy, and thank you so much for having us. So my name is Maureen Stewart, and I am a professor at Northern Vermont University in Vermont, and I teach graduate students in school counseling, so our future counselors here in Vermont. And additionally, I am the C4C Counselors for Computing Community Manager. So what that means is I manage the amazing community of counselors we have with C4C, which we're going to talk a little bit about in this session. So really great to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you for joining us this evening. Next, we have Rachel Madrid. Rachel, if you'd like to tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, hi, I'm Rachel Madrid. I'm currently a high school counselor in Chicago Public Schools. I'm the IB counselor and post-secondary lead. I'm also a consultant with C4C. And I also supervise graduate interns for their counselor education. And I'm very passionate about technology. So I think this is right up my alley and right up every counselor's alley. And I can't wait to answer questions and for you to hear more about how this works in actually working with students in the larger school community.
Thank you, Rachel. And last but not least, we have Ms. Dana Weil. Dana, thank you for coming. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Dana Weil. I'm a school counselor in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, in a public high school. And I also consult with Counselors for Computing. An interesting thing about how I discovered that and got involved is that my mother was at a ISTE conference, so there's any technology teachers on here. So she was a middle school, now retired, middle school and elementary school technology teacher, and she picked up a packet and brought it to me as a school counselor. And I had previously been an academic advisor at a community college and was advising students on IT versus computer science. And I really had to learn on my own, like, wait, what is even the difference? Like, our graduate programs don't really prepare you for all of that nitty gritty all the time. So this packet, I was like, this is what I needed my whole career. And then my partner in my household, he also teaches computer science. So we talk about the counselor teacher educator partnership a lot. And then I lead the team in Pennsylvania, advocating for the counselor involvement in our state level work. So when they roll out computer science stuff to teachers and educators from the curriculum standpoint, I lead the team to educate the counselors alongside the teachers with that work.
Wow, that's awesome. Thank you, Dana. Sweet. So have a couple of questions that I want to start off with since we have this bevy of knowledge in front of us. And so I'll start with you, Maureen. So as a representative of counselors for computing, what are some of the ways in which you're able to advocate for increasing opportunities for computer science education for students?
Well, that's such a great question, Troy. And I have so many thoughts on that, but I want to back up a little bit and just explain a little bit about Counselors for Computing and describe a little bit about NCWIT as well. And just want to share with everyone, in case those don't know, how Counselors for Computing is aligned with NCWIT. So NCWIT stands for the National Center for Women in Information Technology. It's a nonprofit community of over 1,400 universities and nonprofits and government organizations nationwide, designed to work to increase girls and women's meaningful participation in computing. And what I love about NCWIT is that NCWIT provides the tools to equip change leaders, and that means the school counselor, with resources for taking action in recruiting and retaining and advancing women across the nation to enter the computing ecosystem. So that's NCWIT. C4C, Counselors for Computing, as we say, the cool kids call it C4C. We are a program that provides information and resources to school counselors to then again help the engage the conversation with students and to share in that front line of conversation of computer science. So we bring people and programs together with professional development opportunities, resources, knowledge, conversations just like this to give students access to transformative computing careers. And so the question you asked was, what do we do exactly? And there are so many things we do. One thing that came to mind immediately as I'm here in Vermont, I recently came across a student who was an Aspirations in Computing awardee. And that's a program that's aligned with NCWIT, as well as we do a lot of work with Aspirations in Computing. And she grew up here in rural Vermont. And, you've heard the phrase like the one-room schoolhouse. Okay, so she lived in a rural community of Vermont, and she started a girls' coding club after school, not in a one-room schoolhouse, but more like a one-room library. And literally, it's the library is about the size of a dorm room, right? And at a college. But she took on an after-school activity to help girls engage and with that growth mindset, learn more about different aspects with computing. And so that is just one of many examples of what we do with our programs to inform school counselors.
Nice. Okay. Did anyone want to add to, as it pertains to counselors for computing, any strategies that you all may be privy to that Maureen didn't mention?
Well, Dana, you talked about getting that packet, and that might seem, you're like, a packet. What is that? Well, they provide resources for counselors, which is really important because we kind of have school counselors are in very unique positions in districts and schools in their community. And sometimes they're given a lot of responsibilities and it can be overwhelming. So C4 simplifies and provides resources so you can have in your office or you, and that was something that I was looking for when years back. So I feel like some of the resources are actual like tangible resources or websites, and also that networking and building of people in this, that you can talk to and ask questions, because it can be it can seem overwhelming if that's not your background. So as counselors, you can talk about certain things, but our role is also to, expand our own mindset and our own knowledge base, so that way we don't inadvertently become a gatekeeper to students. So they provide a lot of resources.
So actually, that's a good segue into the next question. So obviously, counselors play a key role in influencing the academic trajectory for students. So what are some of the ways, in having that responsibility, what are some of the ways that counselors can stay informed about opportunities in CS and in a way that they can best serve students so that they can provide the proper guidance?
Yeah, if I could take that. So there was a study done about the factors that influence a girl's decision to study computer science. And it found kind of 4 main areas: social encouragement, whether there's positive community, family, peers, reinforcement of the decision to study computer science, self-perception. So do they see themselves in that role? And then academic exposure. Have they gotten even a chance to try it? And then career perception. Like, do they just perceive it as like, okay, computer science, just these like guys coding in their cubicle? Or do they, what do they see it as something that's attractive to them? diverse applicants. And so I think in terms of the school counselor staying plugged in and finding the way like in their community to stay plugged into those 4 domains. So, maybe it's partnering, like understanding the academic exposure options or connecting students with that, joining, getting on the listserv of even your local community. You might have some sort of like STEM network or ecosystem. So sort of plugging into the ecosystem that is in your city or your community around tech, so that you're being a little bit of that bridge between your students and the opportunities out there, especially if your school maybe doesn't have a lot of academic exposure opportunities. So thinking of those, how can you connect students and put students in front of people that'll help them, see this. So thinking about those 4 domains and where you can plug yourself in to stay up to date on your community to help connect your students.
Yeah, and Dana, with that, another resource and program we offer is something through C4C called Advising for Future Ready Careers. So we provided a series of webinars that included something called CS plus X, and that X means sort of that anything else such beyond CX. So we had a series that's available to counselors right now by going to our website, where they can view episodes that relate to anything from CS and addictive apps, CS and ethics, CS and cybersecurity, and then CS, we hear from Road Trip Nation, Crystal and Tao. So again, that's another opportunity where we can provide those tools for school counselors that are available right now.
Awesome. So I know that their access to computer science, we all agree, for all students is important in molding what we look like as communities and as a nation going forward with all of the technological advancements that are going on. And so do you all feel that access to computer science education is or should be considered a social justice issue? Dana, you want to take a stab at it?
Sure. Yeah, I was, that connects a lot to the conversation about CS as a, just access to the internet as a social justice issue. So I do think that our creators of the tools that we're using, because technology is going to be our institutions, so if you talk about social justice and you talk about equity, and institutional racism and the ways that it might have been embedded in our housing or in our banking or all these things about like who created these systems. Well, now like who's creating our systems and our access to technology? If you can't access your money without technology, who's creating that? So it's most definitely an equity issue. I also think sometimes making it an equity social justice issue can attract students to computer science who might not normally think of computer science. They're complaining about something, or they really just want to make a difference. Like how many people, we're all the 3 of us are counselors, right? We wanted to make a difference, in someone's lives. But how to show students that pursuing computer science or, very like closely related, user interface, UX, something like that, can be an equity issue also, to bring them alongside the conversation.
Awesome, thanks. So I know the 3 of you are very committed to the computer science movement and making sure the students that you come in contact with are afforded that access. So, but in thinking through that, what would you identify as some of the key challenges to trying to make that connection with your students? Rachel?
Yeah, I think that a lot of the key challenges that on the counselor level, like in the counseling or, environment, is the fear that you'll ill-advise the student or you don't know enough about the career or the subject or the major. And I think sometimes we maybe it's unconsciously we're suggesting things because we may not know so much or think we have to know so much. So that could impact when you're speaking with the student that says they're really interested in, oh, how do I build this game? Or, or you're having a career conversation, or you're just trying to find a student's strengths, strengths. You're talking about their strengths, it could be anything, right? So I think that is one of the challenges. But I always tell counselors when I'm speaking to counselors, that's something you can learn, and you don't have to learn everything, but you can help point, because point students in the right direction. So I think that's something you have to let go. No, you won't know everything. You won't know every ins and out of careers, but if you have some general knowledge, when you're working with students, say, let's learn together, let's explore this together. That could even build your rapport with that student more so. So no, you don't have to know the ins and outs of it. I think it's important that you do learn about the value of having a CS course, because the world has changed, especially going back to social justice. So issues or certain subjects not being, I don't want to say, or mentioned to certain students, right? So there's a little bit of personal work that you have to do, but you don't have to do everything. To connect yourself to the right resources and people, and you'll be able to connect your students.
Okay. So Dana, and then I'll touch base with you, Maureen. But Dana, do you think, so Rachel just mentioned some specific challenges having to do with the counselor, building that confidence and having that awareness. Do you see that, and Rachel, you're a high school counselor, is that correct? So at the college level, do you think those challenges are a little bit different, or is it similar? What type of challenges do you see at the college level?
Yeah, so I think it's interesting. So NCWIT does work a K-12 alliance, an academic alliance, and then a business alliance, thinking about the pipeline. So a lot of times there's a lot of work going into the K-12 work right now in computer science education, educating teachers about the CS for All movement alongside of teaching them the curriculum. So, a lot of the curriculum roll out to teachers is including things about equity, but then students get to the college level and they don't have that same level of support. So I do know like NCWIT's doing a lot of work on the academic level, because, I hear from students that their professors just aren't necessarily in touch. They're potentially, some of them, especially at their first level encounters, aren't really, are also still thinking about the old way, or everybody in my classroom already loves this, and that's not always the case. So like my partner's a math teacher, and a lot of math educators had to take a computer science course, but whether they still pursued it really depended on like who that professor was, or was it a welcoming environment. So just hearing from college students about, maybe their high school experience with computer science was really welcoming and equitable, and had a good equity like curriculum, and thought about students with IEPs, and thought about students who aren't already predisposed or didn't have the tools when they were younger, and sort of preparing them at the college level. They don't always get that, depending on the institution, or their first level professors. They might get discouraged by others. So our advice for those students, is really to find that community of like-minded people. So finding, other women or other traditionally marginalized groups of people that, you kind of have that good mentorship and community support in the field, as we're working to change it.
Okay. All right. So Maureen, what do you think? Do you think it's, we talk about counselors, there's various stakeholders. You have counselors, you have teachers, you have administrators, you have industry. Can you potentially touch on maybe some best practices you've come across to connect those stakeholders, so that there's the most powerful advocacy for the student to get to the end goal?
Yeah, I can think of a number of things. And I think about what Dana was saying too, about how as counselors, we have to recognize also, we think about bias and what bias is. And, for us, before I became involved with C4C, I had my own, bias, my own preconceived notion of who I would think maybe could handle a computer science type class. And that's what a schema is. What schemas are designed to do is to help us sort through all the information. So I think it's important to say, you know what, we've all made mistakes, or we've all had our biases, and we need to recognize that it's okay. But moving forward, let's learn as school counselors. Counselors love to learn. We believe in that growth mindset. We love, to engage in a number of different resources. And so one of the questions we talk about in our professional development opportunities is asking students the question, what problems do you want to solve? Instead of asking, what do you want to be when you grow up? What problems do you want to solve? And when I started asking that question to my students, that question, what do you want to be when you grow up, or what do you want to do after high school? Really struggling, with answers for the students, but what problems do they want to solve? Then you can really start having those conversations with students. So again, counselors are really uniquely positioned to influence a number of different stakeholders: students, teachers, parents, of course, community, like this young woman in the rural community of Vermont. She partnered with that community to develop a girls coding activity. And when we think about, again, bias too, we think about not just underrepresented students, but underserved students. And that's a real issue with, broadband connectivity and access to resources. And so getting back to what can school counselors do, I think become informed. I think about, showing students how to access the occupational outlook handbook, posting that resource information by state or by region. When you look at, the growth of opportunities and the trajectory in computer science jobs, that it just takes a click of the website to learn about what can I do to become more informed as a school counselor. And what Rachel said is, we turn the table to the students. We ask the students to help do their research, and we help guide them through those tools, because we can't know it all, but although we want to, we can't possibly know all the answers right away. But the tools we give through C4C provide those opening conversations, those open-ended questions to get students, families, teachers thinking about keeping their own biases in check. Yes, this student can handle a rigorous course such as computer science, or this student can handle a math course, and that growth mindset piece. So those are just a few examples of what I think can make a difference with engaging students in computer science.
Awesome. Thank you for that. So we've talked about the role of the counselor. We've talked about some of the resources. We've talked about some of the challenges. So, and Maureen, you had led with the story of the young lady who was involved with the coding clubs, but Rachel is there any success stories you would like to share about students that you've connected with computer science opportunities and now they're flourishing, or they were a shining example for their peers? And Dana, you're welcome to join in as well.
Well, I have a couple actually. So a lot actually, I can't say, but I I predominantly work with students of color, first generation students in the schools that I've served over the years. But some of them is just getting, specifically because we're serving students with NCWIT, like reaching out more to girls, breaking down that barrier. So one of the students that I have currently, she last year was applying for a program with a partner with the university to do some CS courses because we're limited, right? Maybe we have an introductory CS course. So what got her excited was a YouTuber she was following. So, so she was following this YouTuber. She thought it was like, yeah, he created this Mark Rower, I think that's his name. He created that glitter bomb. So, and she started following this person and then just talking about, that's really cool. Like they made this thing go explode. And then and then she started talking about like, I would like to build something like, and make it walk in Mars or whatnot. And my part with her is like, why you can do that, you know, and I can't wait to see you be the next person on when they're launching or doing something. So like and then she's like, I can. And I was like, absolutely. So if you believe, sometimes it just takes like you motivating and believing this students. And now she's super excited, was looking for more resources, which we have tons. So like where to learn new languages, like what websites, what YouTubers, TikTokers, people to follow that. And that's what she's been doing. And that for me, she hasn't finished high school yet, but it was able to align, she was able to choose like hone down and explore majors based a little bit better. And what happens with a lot of students, what happens is sometimes they go into college, this is all connected. Okay. So students, sometimes when they have no idea what they're gonna do, sometimes they spend a lot of time and money and effort when they go on after school, right? For their post-secondary education. So giving that exposure early on and getting excited really early on makes me excited for her, because she's been able to like hone her programs and things that she wants to do. So yeah.
Thanks. Dana, did you have anything you wanted to share?
Yeah, I had a student that was, we met and she said she was interested in international business and marketing. And I suggested a computer science course and she didn't really believe me, right, to see it. I'm like, your job is going to have so much to do with technology one day, international, everything marketing's on our phone, right? So you need to understand how these work. And she didn't really believe me. And so I pointed her in the direction of Modern Figures podcast. So that's actually something else NCWIT helps fund, but it's about elevating the voices of Black women in PhD programs in computer science. And so I pointed in the direction of a specific episode that I thought really connected to kind of business and the way technology is used and this really awesome person's story. And she emailed me back and was like, yeah, I think I will take that course. So utilize these tools and these resources. I think sometimes, my students young Latina sees me as their white counselor suggesting something why are you suggesting this? Well, connect them to the real world. And she took the class and had a blast. And I know, she's going to use these skills one day if she stays in international business or, whether it changes her mind. So we'll see.
Sweet. That's so awesome. And our time is up. Unfortunately, it's been a blast sharing these stories with you all and just getting a deeper look into how counselors can impact students in regards to computer science opportunities. So I would like to thank our panelists, Ms. Dana Weil, Ms. Rachel Madrid, and Dr. Maureen Stewart. Thank you so much for your time this evening and for everything you all do to advocate for students pursuing computer science opportunities. I would like to also thank my colleagues, Abril Vela and Julia Flores, and the entire CS4 Success team, cs4success.com if you're looking for the website. And thank you to everyone who tuned in. And I hope you have a wonderful evening and have a higher appreciation for both computer science education and our counseling community. Thank you and have a good evening.
Thanks for having us.